I got an. Oh no, are we live? I think we're live. Yeah. Just double checking. Yeah, we're live. Awesome. How are you guys doing? How was your weekend?
Good. I took the kids to a zoo.
Hmm.
Obviously, zoos have all rebranded since I was a kid. When I was a kid, zoos were like, come feed elephants. It's great. And now, of course, they're all like, conservation foundations and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was really good. I saw gibbons singing. I mean, they call it singing. Sounds a lot like a car alarm. But yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Jake?
It's a good weekend. Just hung out.
Yeah.
Honestly, friends of ours got engaged, so went to an engagement party. We went to an event that it was like a game show place where like you play like Family Feud or Wheel of Fortune or what's the other one? Like kind of like Jeopardy style or Price is Right. And so then they kind of theme it around. So they themed it around the couple and stuff like that. So it was actually really fun. It's a good time.
Awesome.
It's a good time.
Yeah. Hey, Chad. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, it's kind of awesome that we're all kind of living in different parts. Dan, you're in England, like you mentioned. Jake, you're over in Austin. And then I'm over here in North Carolina. So that's pretty cool. Kind of get to be all over.
I get to talk to people all over the world every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're in the chat, please let us know where you're at too, because I'm sure some people are logging on all over. Cool. So I think we can kind of get things rolling here. So I guess welcome everyone to another episode of React Native Mornings. I know it's not morning for you, Dan, but it's kind of almost past morning for me. And Jake, it's still morning for you. And for our West Coasters, it's still morning. So that's awesome. I'm really excited about this topic. Maestro has been a really cool thing kind of popping up into the React Native sphere, I'd say just a couple of years ago. And we've found a lot of success with it at Infinite Red. And I think a lot of our clients have. So it's great having you all with all your expertise on here, helping us kind of dive into it and learn a little bit more about it. So as you all know, I'm Mazen Chami, co-host of React Native Radio podcast, also doing React Native Mornings too. And I live in Durham, North Carolina with my wife, son, and daughter now. I'm back from paternity leave. And I'm really excited to have two developers, a developer and a co-founder with us from Maestro. And I believe you all's name of your company is mobile.dev. That's kind of what, where you get to your documentation, I think. So welcome to the show, Jake. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure thing. Yeah, we're working on a full rebrand of focus on Maestro now, just because that's what people know us for. But yeah, I'm Jake. One of the co-founders here at Maestro. I'm our COO. And I live in Austin, Texas. We've been working on the business. I think we're coming up on 5 years, the company. I guess I have like an interesting background. It's interesting being, it's a dev tool type solution, but I am actually not a developer. But I joined forces with Leland, my co-founder, our CEO. He kind of came from the mobile background, working platform lead at Uber, and I always have been in the go-to-market arena. So I've done primarily sales, enterprise sales for almost 15 years now. I spent 2 long stints at IBM and then Google. And so that's kind of the skill set I brought to the table early days. And then now I always say I think I've talked to more development and mobile companies probably than anyone else on planet Earth at this point. And so anyway, yeah, just I'm proud to be here, and I really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. We also have Dan, like I said. Dan, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Howdy. Yes. I'm a relatively recent addition to the Maestro team. My testing background comes from various places. My introduction to Maestro, I was a user first. Then I was a Maestro open source contributor as a user. I was like, great, this is open source. There's a feature I want. I'll add that. And then I had questions and I joined the Slack community. And whilst I was there, I went, oh, I can answer that. I can answer that. I know that one. And hung around there. And then that slowly kind of progressed into then like their big opening at Maestro. I go, yes, I'll take that.
Mhm.
So then my job title, is Maestro Architect, which is nice. It's vague enough that it can mean whatever we want it to mean. But really, part of my role is helping folks out in the Slack community. If anybody's ever come through there, they've probably spoken to me at some point. But also helping out companies who want to leg up on the start of their Maestro journey. And so I will sit there and help them write tests, help them learn how to maintain their tests and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will say, as someone that's in your Slack community, I have, if I've run into anything, I'll check your Slack first, and I usually tend to find my answer immediately. I've posted in there once. It was a feature request. Leland did say no to my feature request. I'm not salty about it, but we can talk about that offline maybe. But yeah, that Slack is very helpful. So I do recommend any of our listeners to check it out. We'll make sure it's in the show notes, and we can kind of show it off. Maybe Dan, you could show off how to get to it a little bit later. Yeah. We have people from all over, Fort Wayne, Indiana, someone else from the UK, North Carolina, Pakistan, Tampa, a lot of people here. Hey, everyone. Keep the chat going. I think the nice thing here is we have the two experts in this, within Maestro. And I would really appreciate if you all had any questions. Feel free to post them, and then I'll kind of bring them up to Dan and Jake here. So I think let's kind of go into it. Jake, can you tell us like how Maestro was born? Like, what were the founding days like for Maestro?
Definitely. Yeah, Maestro was born solving our own challenge before we were solving for testing. When we first started the company, Leland, my co-founder, had built some open source technology that did helped with performance testing. So telling you if like key like startup time or key kind of user scenarios were regressing in kind of speed and things. So it was like a tracing technology of all the functions that are kicking off. And so that's where we started, because it was a big problem for Uber at the time, and a few other big teams. And so we started early days working with like Uber and Reddit on that problem. And Maestro was born when we wanted to start doing more custom interactions with the apps. And so we, of course, went to the market to try and find tools that could help us, get into Reddit's app and click on a post and see how long that process was taking. And it's a really hard problem to solve. And we kept finding that teams, as I talked to company after company after company, I kept learning that like performance was a nice to have. Like, yeah, we would love to know that stuff. But a lot of these companies were still just really struggling with like their QA process, like knowing the answer, is my app working as I expect or not? And how are we doing that? And came to continue to find out that a lot of teams either were still manually doing a lot of that work, validating that functionality. But anyway, all the while we built Maestro to solve that problem for Uber and Reddit with the performance problem. We called it Maestro, open sourced it, and all of a sudden it got all this action on Twitter. The tweet kind of went viral. We did like a test scenario with Twitter's app, and And then the GitHub repo got all these stars and all this action. We're like, oh, we should probably double down on Maestro and spend more time there. And so that's where we, started learning these things, like I was saying, where a lot of teams still were really struggling with this problem of making sure that their app is working as expected and doing automated testing. And so there we were like, wow, we could really make Maestro a really powerful tool. And so that was about 4 years ago now that we open sourced it, and then have been working to improve and grow it ever since. And so that's a little bit of the inception. And now we have many thousands of companies all around the world who have adopted Maestro on the mobile side, and supporting some of the largest mobile teams like DoorDash and Square and Block and
That's awesome.
Meta's, the React Native maintainers at Meta actually are using Maestro to test the core of the React Native code base, all that good stuff. So it's come a long way.
Yeah, that's a fun fact. I think whenever the core team at at Meta is releasing a new version, they end up testing their demo app, have you with the new version using Maestro. So that's pretty cool. So, the React Native versions that you all are using every single day is tested using Maestro. So another reason why to use it. Flop asked if we can have a feature request here. I think what we'll do actually is I'll ask you to head over to the Slack channel, community channel, and that's probably the best place to have those feature requests. We have people signing in from all over: Tunisia, New Orleans,
Nice.
Turkey, Portugal, Tunisia. Yeah, thank you all for coming. So I'm going to be that person here. Like, why do I even need to test my app? Can anyone help me with that? Why should I do end-to-end testing? Why?
I'll do a quick answer on my side, and I'll let Dan, who he has his strong opinions as well. But it really just helps you answer the question, like, is my app working as expected or not? Are all the features that we've built working? And I think testing and making sure that is true obviously impacts what your users think of you, making if you're a financial organization, if someone can't make a transaction or something like that, of course you lose that trust, and it can really impact the business there. All these things just kind of add up in this new world. But I think beyond that, there's that next step of like being able to automate that testing process is a whole nother deal. So if you're bought in on, we want to make sure our app is working as intended before we release a new version, then of course it's so many teams are still doing a lot of manual work to do this. Of course, when you can automate that process and get that feedback sooner and sooner, you can catch issues more quickly that you may have introduced with new code changes you've made. And this is really kind of the bread and butter of where we help a lot of companies shift left, because the sooner you can get that feedback, that developer has the context of what they broke, they can fix it, and then you're not waiting hours and hours later on to test that. But that really is that where this comes into play. So that's my take. But Dan, pass it your way of like your your wisdom on it.
Oh, well, start by acknowledging the obvious bias that people doing end-to-end tests also is somewhat tied to me paying my mortgage. That aside,
Yeah.
so obviously there's loads of stuff through, I don't know, kind of 20-30 years of research testing pyramids. They're all now deemed to be kind of antiquated, and it's all about your own context and things like that. But it boils down to, you would ship an app that had great end-to-end test coverage and no unit tests. You wouldn't ship an app that had loads of unit tests and no end-to-end test coverage unless you were replacing end-to-end test coverage with folks with their thumbs doing bunches of checks themselves, right? The reason you would do end-to-end tests is so that, like, and coming from a testing background, I can tell you, doing that same test again and again and again when you want to ship every 2 weeks, it hurts your soul.
Yeah.
Right end-to-end tests make testers happy.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. Gent actually has a very cool question that I'd be interested to hear. What's the most unexpected or creative way the community has used Maestro?
I've got a few. Um,
Ooh.
the first one that springs to mind, last Christmas, I did producing the lyrics of the 12 Days of Christmas in kind of native Maestro, using Maestro to print lyrics. Someone asked this question about a month ago in the Slack community, and there were some really interesting ones in there. There's someone who was checking for the word please using Maestro to launch the Slack app. So when someone requested a PR review, see if they said please, and then use that as to whether or not to decide. Look at, and there's been a few like that where people are using it not just for testing but also for task automation. I saw someone recently who was using it for scraping Twitter in order to do an export to get off the platform. Someone wanted to leave Twitter and just wandering around the Twitter app inside their own profile, getting all their follows and things like that.
I like that. I like the one searching for please. I'm the one that says please to every time I'm talking to ChatGPT. I want them to be nice to me when they take over, for sure. So Scott has asked this question twice, and I think this is like perfect question to kind of ask you, Dan, here. Why did you guys decide to use YAML? And
this question comes up a lot. I come from a heavy engineering background. I was a coder long before I was ever a tester, and I still write code. I'm my what was it, second part of the Maestro community was open source contributions, writing Kotlin. But I actually really like it. I like the fact that your testers do not need to be able to code in order to write good tests. And also your tests, there's a whole bunch of people doing like fake BDD, right? The people who write their like spec flows and gherkins and things and go like, great, well now it's human readable and accessible to the product owner and things. No one is ever actually, that's not true. There are a small group of people who are actually doing BDD, but there's a bunch of people who are producing these files and saying it's human readable now, but nobody's ever using it. Maestro is hitting that middle ground where actually if you write a good test in YAML, you can read it from top to bottom, and if you know your app, you know exactly what that's doing without needing to code. YAML is really, really good for that, in being kind of pretty low ceremony. Yeah, okay. The one complaint about YAML, yeah, sure. White space has meaning and it sucks, but yeah, like it's not XML, right?
I think that's the best part. It's not XML. But no, I do like the idea of getting non-developers, product people writing tests. And I think you all, which we'll probably kind of get into, Maestro Studio, that kind of writes the YAML for you. You can download it and use that way. I think it's probably the best, readable non-code or code that is better readable by non-coders kind of thing. And we did have a scenario where we actually taught a product person how to write some YAML tests in Maestro. They were successful for the most part, but white space kind of got them every single time. So a little formatter here and there did help.
Yeah, I'll just add to that piece with the YAML and some of the stories. I think some of the coolest stories that I hear are the scenarios where some of the more non-technical people have been able to get involved and write tests. We were at a meetup. I did a meetup in India earlier this year in Bangalore, and one of the teams, Gojek, the tech lead said they had a very large manual QA team, non-technical, that within like a week or two, he was able to get ramped up on using Maestro because it was just so easy to kind of understand once you got all the things set up on their machines, of course. And this is sort of where we're trying to just lower that barrier and make it as easy as possible to create automation, because at the end of the day, people don't want to have to take a long time to write these things out for it to work.
Totally. Yeah.
So I mean, in previous roles, I've been like head of testing and things like that. And I've had the ask a few times, kind of like, oh, here's some guy from the support team. We're going to put him in the testing team. Can you teach him how to do test automation? And in days gone by, a lot of test automation is very much, it's code heavy, right?
Yeah.
If you want to use, I don't know, Appium or something like that, like you're going to be writing code.
Mhm.
And if you are relying on your tests to ship your app into production, then your tests are basically production quality code. And so, you know, kind of some guy who you've just shipped in from a support team who has some interest but no programming background is probably not going to be writing production quality code anytime soon. I'm not teaching a computer science degree in the background of doing my job.
Yeah.
Whereas Maestro, actually, you can get people productive. It's been a real eye opener.
So you mentioned Appium, Dan. I think kind of like I want to ask you a question around that. Why not just use Detox and Appium that, you know, we've used as developers in the past for specifically React Native? And can you mention, like, can you tell us like how Maestro stacks up against them specifically? I think I kind of know the answer. Like Detox, I have had painful days, I say this, just setting up Detox on my project. So
So,
yeah.
I mean, we've talked a little bit about YAML, right?
Mhm.
And that's one thing, right? About the accessibility to other people. In terms of like implementation, you've got, yes, setup, right? Both Appium and Detox, they're setup panes. There's a whole bunch of React Native developers watching this, and they spend a quarter of their life waiting for React Native to build. When you add Detox into the mix, they're waiting half their life. So like
Can we get that on a shirt, somebody, please?
yes. So like Detox, I've got a load of experience with Detox. As a tester, I have some innate distrust of it. It works, but the fact that you're doing an instrumented build in order to test it, you're no longer testing the thing that you is actually the thing that you're shipping. Whereas if you go the other way, like at the other end of the scale, you've got Maestro, and Maestro, you could use that to test Android. You don't need to test the app. You're testing a device and the things that are on the screen. Appium does something similar. I think one of the biggest complaints we hear from people switching from Appium is Appium is really slow. They have an extra layer or two in between, not only writing the code, but then like the execution, there's a few extra layers in between. And though some of the ways that they deal with device interactions are really similar to the way that Maestro does it. If Maestro disappeared tomorrow, I would have Appium as my number 2, I guess, but not for
You wouldn't go
for
for the manual QA people instead?
yeah, in fairness, exploratory testing, that's probably where I would go.
Sorry if you're Appium and Detox lovers out there. But yeah.
I have spent time with both of them, and I have definitely gotten value out of them. But even without the salary bias, I prefer Maestro.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't get a cut from Maestro for saying this in the first place. Maestro is really fast and quick to set up initially, and then use, right? It's just a YAML test that you use against your Maestro command, and you get your app testing. We're gonna do a live demo here. I say we. Dan's gonna do a live demo for us later, so you kind of get to see the ease of that. But I can kind of give a quick story here. We did a training earlier this year in January, and they had asked, someone in the audience had asked, can you show us how you would do or recommend testing in React Native? So I was like, all right, sure. This is not part of the curriculum, but we have a couple minutes here to spare. And I think it was 10 minutes. I pulled up, showed the Maestro documentation. I had installed it right then and there, and just set up a quick YAML command to open my app, do a couple clicks, scroll, and kind of go from there. And their minds were blown. They were like, oh, that's it? That's an end-to-end test right there. I was like, yeah, that's it. And they were like, oh, can you do this and this? I was like, done, next. And we kind of like went through it in 10 minutes. Like it really is that easy. And, I'd love to see if, Appium or the Detox could eventually kind of do something along those lines. But I think we know the answer to that question. Gant had a question. Out of all the features in Maestro, which are you most proud of and why? Who would like to go first? Jake?
Is that of all the features, for me, I think I'm just trying to think of the ones that I hear the most gratitude for. And I think this is like a hot topic for some, but I think just the fact that Maestro's working from like your accessibility layer, and then you're able to interact with the, better interact with the elements on the screen, and us deciding to kind of take that route um, helps a lot than driving better accessible apps in the market, right? And I think Europe specifically right now, it's like a big requirement for companies to ensure their apps are accessible. And so I think that kind of foundational level has been really huge to ensure that people are building apps that are truly accessible. So that's one that I just do feel like it's like making an impact to provide better products in the market. So anyway, that's the one that comes top of mind. I don't know if it's really, a mind blowing feature or anything, but just that kind of
No,
foundation level, I think
no,
is good impact.
yeah, I think that's a very important one. Accessibility is one that we always forget about as developers. And you mentioned it's required in Europe. We don't have to go that far. It's required in Canada. So it's something that should be done and something we shouldn't kind of forget about. What about you, Dan?
I'm going to go for a wild personal bias. Labels on commands. It was my first open source contribution to Maestro, and so that then gives you nice output in Maestro, nice output in the console for steps that might not be clear to future folks as well. So instead of having a code comment, you can do it as a label as well. So
Nice.
your YAML is even more readable. But yeah, personal bias. I rate it.
I think kind of Daniel asked the question here. Oh, Dan, I know Dan. He's at IR. But are there any pain points associated with driving the Maestro functionality from accessibility? I think that's actually a good question that we've actually been asked that quite a bit. Or how would you drive it? Would you drive it explicitly with text, with accessibility labels, with test IDs?
So we'll see in a demo shortly. No pressure. The the selectors in Maestro, you drive through IDs and through text, and under the hood, those IDs are coming from multiple sources, and text is coming from multiple sources. Text is text that you can see on screen, but also accessibility text and things like that. And so if your app is not testable in Maestro, it must have terrible accessibility. Being testable in Maestro doesn't automatically mean you've got an accessible app, and so you don't need to drive through accessibility. If your app is accessible, then it will make it easier to test, and one of the easiest ways to fix your testability is through accessibility, because you're improving your accessibility without having to massively change the UI as well, right? So most people who are looking to do tests, they don't want to go to the business for approval to say like, hey, can I completely rearrange the screen so that my tests pass, please? Yeah. And so whilst they're linked, they're not tightly coupled, they're just loosely coupled. I'm not sure if I've answered the question fully. Do chuck in another comment if I haven't.
Yeah, no, I think you have. And I know a bunch of people have been asked.
The main point mostly, though, is like, if you can't test with Maestro, it means that your app is probably not accessible in the first place. And that is definitely the pain point, is then you have to go back and work and make sure you incorporate that into your code.
Yeah, that's a good point right there. So you all are making us make our apps accessible. I love that. A bunch of people have asked about, can you integrate Maestro outside of React Native? And I'm going to kind of speak for it here and say, yes, you can. I know you can do it with native Android, native iOS, Flutter. I said it out loud, web views and web specifically. right? Did I miss anything there?
I'm trying to think, whatever it is you're creating on a mobile device, you can definitely do it because you're controlling the device, right?
Yeah.
So like if you want to interact with the home screen of your Android device and swipe up to get the tray up and pick your app and launch your app that way, you can do that. And so yeah, Kotlin multi-platform or something like whatever it is you're writing in. Yeah, if you can get it on the screen of a device, yes. And there's also some web support in Maestro as well for testing websites in browsers. But I feel like the wrong audience.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think some people asked a bunch of questions about web, which we'll probably get into a little bit later around those questions. But I think, Dan, if you can kind of get set up for your demo, I'd appreciate that. And I think, one thing I want to mention too is if you are looking to do use Maestro on your CI/CD versus Maestro Cloud and all that kind of, making that decision for you and your team, this demo is going to be perfect because, Dan's going to go over some stuff to show you all potentially Maestro Cloud, Maestro, I believe you all call it Studio, right? The desktop app. This is a new product. I think it's still in beta. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Right. So this is Maestro Studio. On the left, so this is the latest released beta. So I'm not using anything out of like some secret branch or anything like that. I'm going to use an Android emulator. Android emulator, relatively clean. The only thing I've got here is I've used Infinite Red's Ignite.
Ooh, look at that.
And I've just followed the steps in the README and created the pizza app. And so in here, it's in a nice clean state, and so it's all just which I think a bunch of folks here are already going to be pretty familiar with. The only other thing I've got going is a thing that I do quite a lot with my tests. I've got in the background, I've got HTTP toolkit running, and so intercepting traffic and stuff like that as I'm browsing around, and so that way, if I don't know if other people have hit this, or going through the process of test automation in an app is also testing the app, because as you're writing the test, you kind of go like, I'm going to tap this, tap this, tap it. Oh. That part I find really handy, and so I'm capturing data as I go. Right, let me get this back into a clean state. So we're going to start from the beginning. I'm going to open a workspace, and so here I've got the pizza app, and in here, magic keys to give me hidden folders. We're going to find that the Ignite Bootstrap already comes with a couple of tests already in it, because wonderful people.
Dan, if you can just zoom into the code just a little bit.
More pixels.
One or
How's
two
that?
more. Try one or two more. One more. Yeah. Okay. I think that should be good.
Right. So there's a couple of flows here. One of my favorite podcasts. What's that? So if I go and have a look. So again, YAML's reading from top to bottom. Got some configgy stuff at the top. We're going to do an on-flow start, which is a nice shared flow here. What are we doing? We're going to launch the app and doing some stuff about development servers, maybe some tapping around, but largely not. We're going to do login. We're going to go to podcast, see the episodes. We're going to tap on show favorites and see that it's empty. We're then going to do it again. And then we're going to scroll twice and pick an episode. We're going to copy it. We're going to scroll up, tap on the favorites again, and see that it was favorited. Cool. Okay. What I'd like to do is do that test, but do it from scratch. And so that has picked up from the device that this is already installed. Right. So
I think someone asked the question, Dan, that I think would be interesting.
Yeah.
Should we have Maestro.yaml flows within the same Git repo project. Are there pros and cons? What would you recommend? I think sounds like Maestro Studio is picking up the files from the project specifically.
Yes. So I mean, here I've opened the .maestro folder, right? So in this case, yes, they are. Yes, they were. I have a horrible tester answer. It depends, right? Normally, yes, I'd say yes. You might as well put your tests with your code because then your tests that pass against that version of the code. But Maestro, like I can use the Maestro app to test an app that's on the Android emulator. I could use it to test like the Contacts app or whatever. And if I do that, like, well, I'm not going to put that with their code, so it doesn't need to be. But it depends. I probably line your repos up with your organization. If your testers are non-technical and they want to have their own repository somewhere where they don't need to worry about package JSON changes or whatever, sure. But I would default to yes.
Keep it within the project. Cool.
Yep. Right. And so this is your default test. If I run this, it's going to launch the app in a nice clean state. Done. Right. And then we want to tap to log in. We want to get past that screen too. And then we're going to go and have a look at podcasts. And so you notice when I'm doing this, there is an insert and there's so for the various steps, there's when I go to tap on, there's insert and run an insert. Sometimes the insert kind of makes more sense because maybe it's an assertion or maybe it's a but here where I'm using run and insert, the emulator is keeping up with the steps as I'm building them. So if I start this from the beginning now, I'm just going to end up in exactly the same state I was as I was following along, and that is dead handy when you're developing the tests in the first place. Right then, so we got to this step, and what was the next one? We said we were going to tap on show favorites. We were going to see that it was empty, weren't we? So this looks empty. Yeah, assert. We want to say yes, do that, and then turn it back off again. Boop.
This is awesome. I think the last time I used Maestro Studio on the web, it functioned the same way, but this just seems more handy with this autocomplete. And I love how it shows you, like, it almost takes like a screenshot and puts it in and just like click on here to do, what do you want to affect?
The Studio for web gave you this kind of effect where you could pull out various bits and generate commands. What it didn't get you was kind of like, I'm going to build the real file. You were copying and pasting from Studio into your text editor every time. I've put in some spaces just for nice readable tests. So we've gone there. We've seen that it looks empty, and then we come back again. Right, we need to pick an episode. MetaQuest. We love nerds. Right then, so what we're going to want to do, the one that was in the repo. Now, I'm not throwing shade at whoever wrote those tests, but they were doing some swipes to get there. What I'm going to do is go, I want to scroll until that one is visible. Whoop. Probably, actually, the thing we wanted, the actual intent there was, I want the one about MetaQuest. That's the one I want. All text selectors, all ID selectors, they're all regular expressions all the way down. And so you can do simple things. Simple things, keep it readable. Complex things like XKCD, I know regular expressions, etc. Right then, what are we doing next? We're going to tap the favorite button. So let's do that. And again, select it. So what does this mean? So that is index 2. That's 0, that's 1, that's 2, right? However, if the screen is like that, it's index 3. And if the screen is like that, it's going to be index 1. So let's fix that selector as well, right? So we're going to tap favorite, and we want it to be the favorite button that is below MetaQuest.
Ooh, okay. That's a new command, I feel like, below, right?
No. It's in there in the docs. If you go to the selectors thing, I will just let me go and selectors. So here in the docs, you've got selectors. These are all the things you can use. So whether it's checked or selected, you appoint within the existing element and things like that. I want to tap on one that's exactly this wide. So you've got different ways of being able to differentiate. As you get further on down, you've also got your relative things. And so we could also have done, I want to tap the favorite button that is the child of the container that also contains the text MetaQuest. Nice. Somewhere in its element. And so being able to do those sorts of things, depending on how you've got your different container levels and things like that all set up, you can use these. And so you got left off and right off and below and above, that kind of, and again, that is at a point in time, right? Yeah. So below is all things below. And so a favorite button that is below MetaQuest is 1, 2, 3 favorite buttons, but the first one is the one that it's going to use.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, there's plenty of that in the docs. Right then, and then we needed to scroll back up to this one. We want to scroll until visible. I'm going to insert this because I need to say direction up.
Frank has a good question while you're typing there. I think
it'd
be cool. Will we see the docs brought into Maestro Studio? Would be nice to hover, hit a key to open below or tap on and be on your way.
Oh,
nice.
So there's a link there. There's a link there that gets you to the docs. What it won't get you at the moment is a link to that list of selectors.
Okay.
I'm gonna quick.
There we go. Feature request, Frank.
Yeah. And we said we weren't doing feature requests in here, but that is a great idea. So we want to tap that, and we want to say that this one is visible. And again, let's get our real intent in there. The one with MetaQuest is in there. Cool. Let's run that from the beginning.
Oh, I love the last screenshot at the bottom too.
Yes.
That's very helpful.
Yes.
Especially if you run into an error, right?
It's more helpful when it goes wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the labels I was talking about. So you can override any of these with a label. And so you can get something that maybe means more if you're not able to do a particular. So like we talked about tapping a point within an element. Why, like giving the why of why you're tapping a point with an element so that the next person who comes along, and again, writing tests is easy, maintaining tests is the hard bit, right?
Yeah.
Same with what we say about code. Is it debugging code? You need to be twice as smart to debug code as you were to write code. And so if you write the smartest code you're capable of, you'll never be smart enough to debug it.
I like that. I like that. And actually, someone just posted a comment that I was going to ask you. So everything you did right now is test agnostic. So what about if I have multiple languages and I want to test the different languages that my app supports?
Yes. So there's some stuff in the docs about doing a page object model style in here, right? So you can take all your strings, and so let's go and do that now. I want a JavaScript file, and my JavaScript file is going to be typing skill inversely proportional to the number of observers. Right. So let's go output dot strings is, and then right, and so we can go through here and we can create an object with all of our different strings, and we do that for our different languages. Okay. Somewhere here we then need to choose to run that script. Where did I put that? In there, in shared, and I called it strings.js. So then when the test runs, I'm going to pull in my strings. And then here, I'm going to, it was output.strings.podcast. Is that right? Yeah. And so if I run that now, if I've remembered everything, I'm doing a live demo. People of a certain age will remember the Bill Gates live demo of Windows 95.
I'm not going to show my age here.
Super. There we go. So it's picked it up and moved on. And so that's the way you would do it. You would abstract all of your strings out. And again, so you want to make these nice and readable.
Yeah.
Because again, you want someone who's coming through and reading from top to bottom to be able to get what these mean. If you are the person maintaining these tests day in, day out, you keep that context in your head in the same way that you do when you're maintaining parts of your app. Obviously, your app will always grow to a size where you can't keep all of it in your head all of the time. But like there are bits of it you know well because they're the bits that go wrong, or they're the bits that you look after, or whatever. And but yeah, being able to keep them nice and readable. Absolutely.
I think Scott had a good follow-up question to kind of going back a little bit to the whole below concept that you had on there.
Sure.
Is it possible to check if one element is next to another in Maestro? Asked another way, can you get the parent and understand the order of its children?
You wouldn't get the order of its children. So because you have I'm trying to explain this away. Right. So we've got an element hierarchy behind the scenes, right? So Maestro at this point has gone to the device and asked its accessibility APIs, give me all of the things that are on the screen. And so all of the things that are on the screen, you have elements, and then you have element that are children of other elements. And so you don't have a particular order because what you've got is a set of bounds. And so when you say an order, are we talking top to bottom or left to right, or ordered by size, or ordered by hierarchy from outer to inner, and so there isn't a natural order. What you can do is talk about your above and below, and your left and your right, and your and so you can build very deep selectors where you can combine your child of or your descendants and your above and your below to say, I want a thing that is above another thing, both of which are children of or to the right of. And so then you're being very explicit about what I really mean. I don't mean the second child. What I mean is that thing that is the right of that thing on the screen.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Scott. Cool.
Right, so we've done a nice example there. I think it'd be quite cool you can also run this in Maestro Cloud. So I have set up a little company called Pizza Company. Yeah, those defaults make sense. Pixel 634, because that's what I've got running here. Using the APK that I've told Maestro Studio about just before the call. Now, if I run this is going to upload my workspace, and so it's going to upload all of this with intent to run. Great. With intent to run this, and also the APK itself. It's running one file at a time. Okay. I love a live demo. Let's do a live demo without the strings for now, because we're running one file, we're not running a workspace. Okay. So if I run this one, it's going to upload the APK again.
So this is the perfect part of the demo for everyone that's trying to evaluate between running their tests on the Maestro Cloud or your own CI/CD infrastructure.
Yes. So I would say yes, like in the same way that you can run Maestro locally, and I could bring in a CLI, and we could run Maestro test commands and do it all in VS Code and things like that. So you can run them locally, and if anything you run locally, you can run in your CI as well, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, you could run through all of your tests, and that's fine if you've got 3 tests, right? Or 4 tests or 5 tests. Well, once you get to the point that you have 50 tests or 60 tests or 70 tests or 200 tests, and you're using that in order to make a decision, can I submit this to the App Store now? How long do you want to wait? And so with you can run an Android emulator in GitHub Actions. I think is it React Native Circus they publish an action for doing that, and a few other people do as well. The Mac OS runners, they're a bit more expensive, but you can run a simulator on those, and there's stuff you can do. But if you try and run an Android emulator on your free Ubuntu potato scale GitHub Action Runner, and then you try and run the JVM on top of that, and then try and run all of your interactions with Maestro on top of that, you're going to introduce your own flakes on top of your tests. Maestro Cloud, on the other hand, is built for this kind of problem, where you have a number of devices that are available to you 24/7 on your plan, and then like it will do like, great, I've received 60 tests and you've got 12 runners, and so I'll start 12 off, and as soon as one of them finishes, I go, great, I'm going to throw that device away, build a new device, and put the next test on it. So what we're seeing at the moment here is that there's a device being made in Maestro Cloud. In fact, here's
and this
a console.
is actually why I brought up Robin's question here. How can we reassure clients about concerns like flaky tests? How easy is it to debug failures, right? And I think that kind of answers, you're answering the question here a little bit by saying, yeah.
So Cloud is totally built around the idea of repeatable tests. So here we've done a preparing step, and we're into running now. For every test, a new device is built, so that when you ran your tests last time and when you run your tests this time, you're getting a repeatable environment. That isn't quite the same thing that you're going to get here. When I'm running locally, yeah, sure, I can clear the state, but have I installed any other apps? So this one's got, HTTP interception running and other things like, whereas this one is going to be the same state every single time, and it's managing all the orchestration repeatability. And then you're going to get into like, I've got dashboards and I can have data about it, and I can do slightly more than I can do just running it locally, just running it in a CI pipeline. Go into here, success. I've run through all the steps, and now and you can even have a little video of your test running. Obviously, you guys have seen this test now enough times. You know exactly what's about to happen. And then you can also see, if you've run it multiple times, you can see prior executions to the same thing. You can go into the dashboard and see things that are flaky and things like that.
I think that's very helpful too. If you run into an error, let's say, step 5 or 6 errored out there, it would be in red, and you'd go in there and you would evaluate it, and you'll see the screenshot on the right, like, oh, wait, we couldn't find my MetaQuest. What's going on? Then you debug it that way.
Yes. Yeah. I need to update my test from Oculus Quest to MetaQuest or whatever. It also comes with the workspace, so the list of files that have been uploaded as part of this run, and so those sorts of things are all available. Again, so this is exactly the same thing you would be doing in CI. So assuming you're using GitHub Actions, you would check out your source code, run the Maestro Cloud GitHub action, and it would go and upload all of your tests, and maybe you'd have tags or whatever in there. There's loads of docs about how to control which tests you want to run and which ones you don't, or whatever. And they would just all turn up in this same list of runs you've got here, and you would see and gather all your test results and get all your feedback back into your action, whether or not to ship your app. I'm trying not to go too far into a sales pitch and carry on with a technical demo. Right, so you've got some stuff you can do in Studio, and also in Studio, like we've gone into a little bit of JavaScript, but you can go a lot further. One of the things you could do is like a rendering test for your podcasts. So this is all clearly going off to an endpoint, and you're going to go away and say, like is any of this being mangled versus what's in the API? And so in here you can if we ignore the original purpose of this file, you could you can drop into like full-blown JavaScript here. I happen to have this running for a reason, for a good demo. I could go here, I can go and do my response, you know, kind of get the body. From the body, you would need to know the items. And so if we go and open this in a browser, what have we got in here? We've got in the body, you've got items, and in the items, you could pick out, you could go and find the one and filter them for the one with MetaQuest in it, get that string using the selector that we had and using the selector that we were already using. So we could go insert copy text from, and we'll just say, I want to copy the text from the one that includes MetaQuest, which is then going to copy all of the text of that element, and you can compare it against your API response and know that given that my client is just an API client, I want to check that the rendering matches the API contents. So there's a whole bunch of power in there that isn't just kind of I can do interactions with the mouse. And similarly, obviously, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are more familiar with kind of this view of things, where I want to do something in here where I've got my entire app. I'm going to do my tests at the same time. I'm going to start copying and pasting my IDs or something from my source and bringing them in here. And I'm going to bring in instead of using the I've just realized tiny pixels. Instead of using buttons, I can do I want to do Maestro test Maestro flows favorites, and I'm going to do it that way. And then if I move that back out of the way, the same tests that are that were running in Studio are now going to be running on the Android device. And so you can pick your poison. I flip between using Studio and using VS Code. I use VS Code for big refactorings, and if I want to do anything really meaty in JavaScript, if I'm building my tests, I'm going to do that in Studio as I'm going.
Yeah, I love this. I think we get to see both aspects of it. I use Studio or Cursor for all that, but I think after seeing Maestro Studio, I will probably focusing on that more from a Maestro test because of all the help that you kind of get along the way. I think that's very helpful.
I would say about 2 weeks ago, I was in exactly the same boat. I thought Studio is being built for other people, but like I'm an engineer, I can code. And then having used it, it took me less than a day to be completely switched to. There's still some things I will drop back to VS Code for, where I kind of go like, I need a real IDE to be able to do some specific things. But then I'm back in Studio and going, right, now carry on building your tests.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think JP asked a question that kind of high level conversation about, what are some of the technical limitations that you can, do during testing or can't do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to go all kind of test nerdy. Yes, every test you should attempt to control the state of your device. And you might do that by turning on airplane mode or setting orientation, which is the thing in the Maestro 2 pre-release that came out earlier today. There's stuff like clearing the state of your app and things like that. So like you are trying to control your state. There's a test nerdy thing, which is all attempts to control state are merely an illusion because there's a complex Linux kernel running under there with job scheduling and all sorts of things. You're only controlling some of the state. In terms of control, what couldn't you do? So there's nothing in there at the moment about controlling some of the lower level comms, so you can't turn your Bluetooth off. Apart from, obviously, you can turn your Bluetooth off because you can swipe from the top and tap the button.
Yeah.
But there's some limitations there. Trying to think what other limits you might have. There's no limitations in terms of test environment, like I want to test on a device that has no storage left.
Mhm.
There's an idea of a thing that like Maestro can't emulate because it's interacting with the surface of the device. Although you could just keep adding files.
Yeah, it's almost like you can control the camera, but what are you going to do when the camera's on, Maestro Cloud? Is that an actual test you'll be doing? Because on the cloud, you can't be like, oh, turn the camera and scan the QR code, right? Because there is not possible.
That is a good shape, right? So Android emulator will come with a camera, and so like you can open it up and see the stupid pixel guy and hit the shutter button and take a picture. What you can't do is scan a QR code. You can't feed. I imagine there probably is some convoluted ADB you can do in order to control a device, in order to have replace the camera image. Probably Maestro doesn't do that at the moment. That's a really good example of a thing that, like, at the moment, if you have lots and lots of QR code tests, then maybe Maestro is not the right tool. I have, prior to this, worked in an environment where a lot of the tests relied on Bluetooth. And so we used Maestro in that environment to automate everything else, so that the only test that you were doing before release was using the litany of Bluetooth devices that were lying on your desk. Just do those tests, then ship it, because then all of the other stuff, like all of your login flows, all of your onboarding stuff, all of your change password, all of that stuff, all of that was taken care of. So you all had confidence in that, and then all you've got left is your physical stuff.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for doing that demo, Dan. I know we're getting very low on time, but I want to make sure we covered like the last two questions that I had for you all. Mainly, I think this probably kind of goes to you, Jake. What are your long-term thoughts around supporting web specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely high on our radar to solve for. I think we found that testing in mobile is really hard and not very well solved problem. But the more and more we talk to organizations, being able to standardize on just one framework and tool to test all the things is a super valuable value proposition to any organization. We just want to make it super easy to ensure a high quality bar. So we do have kind of beta support for web testing today. You can jump into a web view even in a mobile test and things like that already today. But we'll continue to really build that out. You have the option to run web tests on cloud on Chrome today. And so there'll just be more and more support for that built out. But that is very much our vision, is one framework and like platform solution to handle all your testing. We're just getting a lot of requests for it. So
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that's helpful context specifically for us, React Native build once and you get it on mobile web essentially. And, it sounds like more other places. MetaQuest, I think, is another thing. So that's cool. I think a lot of people were probably thinking that this question was going to come way earlier. We're going to give it a lot more time, but AI and testing, what is your all's thoughts around that? I feel like a lot of people are now thinking like, I need AI to do all my tests.
Yeah. I mean, I can give a quick story, and folks who might be watching, like who've been following us along. I mean, we built an AI product, a year and a half back to attempt can I just in natural language describe my test requirements and can an AI solution test this for me. And we call it App Quality Copilot and then Robin, and it could almost do it. And I think the almost do it is the key thing here, where folks with testing want a deterministic outcome for the most part. They want to ensure that the requirements they have are met to have confidence that that thing in their app is working or not. And I think, from watching even this session with Dan, like you see the complexity still within a test of like making sure all these little things are working as expected. And what we found with that product is folks would have to be very detailed step by step by step by step by step with that tool. And it still might not do the right thing each time. And then we put all these barriers around
Yeah.
it to ensure that it would have consistency. And it kind of just looked like a Maestro test at the end of the day. And most people started telling us, I actually can write this test with Maestro almost just as fast. So that all to say with AI, I think how we've stepped back, but are going to continue stepping into AI. It's the same use cases. It's, you know, we have our MCP, our Maestro MCP service available. You can plug it into, you know, whatever LLM tool that you're working with to help you with generation of tests, looking at a failure, helping you debug and start self-healing tests. And then I think the other piece is like runtime decisions using AI is another beta feature we're exploring. You know, you probably see in the docs some of these things like assertions. We still have, you know, like hallucinations might happen, and there's, you know, that's why we haven't really made these things production, because we still see some issues there. But there's no doubt we'll continue to build in AI over time to help with just accelerating that whole process and help folks get test coverage even faster and make it even easier to maintain. So
that last bit there is the bit that I'm excited about in terms of what we can do with AI. I don't want an AI powered test. It's gonna, like, you know, it'll work 4 times out of 5. But what I want is that AI powered thing, that thing that says like, hand off to the LLM, assert that there's a picture of a dog, or like tap on the red one in the top right. Like being able to have that step level control and being able to pass off the kind of the determination of what it is and if it is, and being able to do that at a step level and being able to do it with like my specific instructions. Sure, there's probably going to be some, like, I'm going to have, like, anybody who's tried to ever get like Copilot to produce the right code knows that, like, maybe that no, not like that. No, not like that. Third time, right? I've got the correct prompt now. There might be a bit of that in there, but I'm looking forward to being able to test some of the things that, like, I can't do in Maestro right now, right? So, like, one of them that I hit last week was I wanted to know that field validation had failed, and there were no attributes other than the fact that it was red. Maestro has a hierarchy of elements, and one of the things that isn't in the hierarchy is what color is it. And so AI would be able to do that. I'd be able to go, like, you know, check that it's red. You know, that I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we're over an hour, and I kind of think this is probably a perfect point to wrap up here. I want to thank the audience. Thank you all for all those questions. I think they're very helpful. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all the questions. I know there were a lot of good ones out there, but one thing I will recommend is check out the Slack community link. So this is it right here. Once you click on it, you'll be given a form, fill out that form, and then you'll get the Slack link, and you can kind of join the community that way. Ask your questions there. Team's very helpful. I know I've had questions answered on there every single time whenever I needed it. Dan, Jake, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. I loved it. I think it's very helpful to everyone here, and, you know, kind of speaking for the community, thank you all that you all are doing for end-to-end testing. And I, you know, thank you. Can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having us, Mazen. Yeah, no, I feel like, Dan, great job, man. And I feel like these kind of examples are so huge for folks, just where, you know, learn a few things. And yeah, my shameless plug is, yeah, if you're looking at Maestro, seriously, join the community. Shoot us a email, hello@mobile.dev. You know, we're still a small team growing. I pretty much answer everything. So you know, we would love to talk to y'all if you're seriously looking at Maestro, and we'd love to learn from you. So I appreciate you guys having on.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Before I sign off, you know, I hope you guys our audience enjoyed this. I want to actually tease our next episode. I'm going to have Gabriel from Expo on here pretty soon, Wednesday, August 27th at 12 p.m. Eastern again. We're going to have our next episode of React Native Mornings. So be on the lookout for that. I think that'll be another fun one that we have out there. Don't forget to subscribe. Reach out if you have any topics you'd like me to cover in the future. I think this is kind of something that we can keep the ball rolling with. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Thanks, Mazen. Take care.